Shalom, happy Hanukkah. This is Avraham Shira from Eretz Israel. We're on a subject here I think we could spend a lot of time with called Jewish Cultural Revolution. And today we're going to talk about the idea of culture itself. What is culture? Where does it come from? Why do we have it? Is it really important? What museum you go to, what show you go to, what music you listen to, what food you eat, what clothes you wear. Are all those things really important? Bottom line? Well, on one hand, you could, if you want to take the high spiritual road, you could say, no, it's not important what you wear and what you eat, and where you think, what you drink, it all depends on the parameters of your measure, okay? And what we have here is the culture really is the collective values of a society, expressed through art, expressed through food, through clothing, through, music's part of art, obviously. So you see, it's the collective values of a culture that get expressed into our lifestyle. And that's a culture. And every culture is different depending on what their values and their expression of those values is. So, in ancient Rome, I think they had a little different culture because they like to go on Sunday to go to the Colosseum and see human beings fight animals to the death. That's a pretty raw culture, And then you get other cultures where, they sit around with snakes. And I don't know if they pray to the snakes or with the snakes or, I've watched the videos like a lot of people, but, it's a cultural thing, a relationship to nature. And a relationship to nature expressed through snakes. And so on and so forth throughout this endless planet of the human race. So, when we talk about a culture, don't think about it as just like, my favorite rap star or the movie that won the Oscar. It is much deeper and much more profound and spread out through all of us. And the thing is about a culture, how do you learn it? Well, it's not like they teach you. You just grow up in it and you absorb it. Because human beings, the main way we learn is copying. We learn everything initially by copying. Ultimately, we learn to read and we can read books and then we can copy from the books, but we're actually not meeting the person, but we're meeting their mind in their book. And we're meeting a person, not in person, but if they're on the pixel screen, then we can meet them there. So we start to absorb culture from the people around us. Subconsciously. It's not conscious at first when you're a child, when you're a baby. You don't make decisions based on values. When you're young, you make decisions based on what's around you. It's all you know. That's who you are, is what you know. And personality is a developmental stage in the process of choices. Okay? I make choices that make me who I am. And the brain is a very plastic, elastic organ that grows and shifts and has all kinds of movement changes within it according to our choices. Now, the plasticity starts to go down around 25. That's where you start getting, being who you are, a little bit stuck in who you are. You don't have to call it stuck. You could say fixed. You could see profoundly shaped if you wanted to. But the culture is the medium of the communication of values. Odpam. So the Greeks come along on Hanukkah, they say, we have our values. And we're in charge, and we have more chariots and more horses and more spears and more swords. And so you're going to do what we say. Well, we're going to try to impose that. Like all tyrants do. And as we talked about yesterday, of course, the imposition of one culture on another is based on a desire for the resources of that land. And those people and their labor. So let's not be fooled. You talk about the Chinese called it the Culture Revolution because they wanted to demilitarize the sound of the word. But it was very military. And we know that Mao Zedong, when he started the first Culture Revolution, he was founding something that cost a lot of lives. And so don't think that the political and the financial and the military are separate from the Cultural Revolution. They just like to take a back seat because it's a little too radical. It doesn't sell well on the corner at the corner newsstand. However, Rabbi Nachman takes us all to another level, thank God, right? He takes us to a deeper level, that these cultural values that are built of priorities, what you like more than another person, what religion you like, what type of service you like, what type of sport you like, what type of entertainment you like. All of that is rooted, he says, in our personality traits. Well, that doesn't sound like a big chidush, that our personalities, which are constructs and expressions of the culture, our personalities come from there, and then we become that. But no, he's saying like this, they come from our midot, our traits, actually shape our expression of life in the world. That is your kindness, your strength, your truth, your ability to endure, your ability to be loyal, to be honest, to give commands, to be wise, to be patient. All the qualities that make up a personality, they get shaped by our desires. Our desire for honor, our desire for money, our desire for other types of power, our desire for lust. All the different desires actually shape the values that shape the culture. So you see, it's a cascade of influence. A cascade of influence that comes down level to level, but it's actually coming out from our inner being moment by moment. But when a child hits the wall of culture, he has to make choices. Am I going to be a person who walks around naked? Or am I going to put on bathing suit like everybody else? Well, if my parents go to the nude beach, what am I going to put on? Right? And so on and so forth. The child still learns from the culture. And that's why you see in America today and in a lot of other historical events, the attempt of changing a culture begins with the children, because they're so much easier to change and influence. And they're not attached to things like having a Brit Milah on the 8th day, because they don't even know what that is at first. And they're not so attached, well, they like Shabbat because, Shabbat's fun for a Jew to sit down and have a meal with his family and to praise and sing and learn and daven and, and dance. But if he didn't know about Shabbat, he wouldn't take it on. And the same thing with Rosh Chodesh. The new month, the new calendar, the fixing of the holidays is based on Rosh Chodesh. If I don't know when Passover is, I don't know when Shavuot is. If I don't know when Shavuot is, I'm not going to know when, Rosh Hashanah is going to roll around the corner. And then Hanukkah is going to come up and I'm going to know, where am I? Where is it? And that's what the Greeks did. And that's what they attacked. But you see, it goes all the way deeper than calendars and holidays. It goes into our very desires. Do I have a holiday based on trick or treat? Do I have a holiday based on a mass murder like Valentine's Day? Do I have a holiday that's based on the martyring of some individual, which is a whole political question that I don't know about? Or do I have a holiday based on a national victory over an oppressive foreign enemy? Or do I make a holiday based on the redemption of our people from another nation? So you see, when we make a calendar, we're making it from the events in our history, in our narrative. So if you change the events, you change the narrative. And then you weaken the culture, you weaken the people's identity, and then they're easy to control. So today we're talking about what the idea of culture is, but understand that it's not just what you see. If you like I put on the radio and I hear some of these rap songs, it's like porn, it's like X-rated music. It's ridiculous. Whoever invented that? But if you listen to it, that's the culture. This is what the people are professing in their art. So what are they living in their minds? And what are they living at home? And do I want to be part of that culture? Well, you could say, well, I'm not part of that culture. I don't live there where they live. Right? You don't think it has an influence? Even if you live across the river, across the railroad tracks, across the nation. What's the idea of a global community? Global influence. That one person can invent one thing and sell it to 50 million people in a few clicks of a button. So we are becoming more and more a global society. That means global responsibility to each other. There's no longer, I can say, well, this is what we do, this is what you do, and you can do, you can sacrifice people in the jungle, who cares? You can practice cannibalism in South America, who cares? But it's not so simple anymore, because we're all becoming more and more homogenized and closer together, more in touch, more communication, more influence, more choice. Do I want that culture influencing me? Do I want that music going in my head? So these personality traits, it's built on these desires. It's rooted way deep inside us, and it's all flowing out of each of us. One person in their clothes, another in their music, and another in their food. Now, there are other aspects that contribute to our culture, and i.e. who we are, like the geographics of where we were born. Are you born in a northern climate or a southern climate? Are you born in the ocean or in the mountains? All these features, they seem like we don't even think about them. We don't take them second granted. We take them second granted because we don't we haven't been taught to think that deeply about them. But for example, the majority of the human race has spent its lifetime on the coastlines of these continents. Why? Because the coastline offers a more immediate access to food through the ocean. So most cultures have always developed around oceans, meaning people learn to fish and to swim and to cultivate the ocean, which is a wonderful thing, of course. And the last thing you want is people who produce products to pollute your food source, right? And then you have the people that are raised in the mountains, and they have their own cultural background. The clothes they wear and the food they eat, and the way they travel and the migration patterns. So who we are is a product of all of that. And that comes down all the way down to things like, do you have one wife or many wives? Or do you have one home or many homes? Are you nomadic? Are you established in one place? This also contributes to our self-definitions. And that self-definition comes under attack when we interface with a global culture. And remember, the global culture is not going to come out and say, hi, I'm the global culture. Don't buy into me unless you want to be like me. And if you buy into me to be like me, you're going to be like me, and you're going to be held captive there. No one's going to tell you that. They just want you to buy the music and buy the clothes and buy and buy and buy, because that's part of a consumer society. If you don't buy, you break down the money chain. And another thing that we always have to look at is how we spend our leisure time. There are cultures, the country of Bulgaria, for example, has been charted as being one of the highest per capita nations that practice meditation. And the people in Finland have the highest per capita of people that go to saunas and sweat. And if you go to other cultures, you'll see other practices that are particular and unique to them. Now, who cares whether they sweat a lot or play rock and roll all day and night? Well, it just depends on how much influence they try to have on others. But what's the problem with having influence? Well, I'll tell you what the problem is. Because nothing is pure in its intentionality except the love and the awe of God. Only when you and I decide that we agree on the same God, we're going to love and serve in awe, is there a true psychic consensus. And that's a very high level. Granted, it's really hard to get 8 billion people to agree to such a thing. However, when people sell you their culture, their foreign culture, they're not going to come out and tell you it comes with their gods and their agendas and their protocols. They're not going to sell you that. Like when you buy Chinese. I told my wife, it's like we go to the toy store to buy our kids toys. It's a great fun to go buy your kids and your grandkids toys. But it's not so fun when you see they play with them one day and then throw them away. Is it all chad pami? That's Hebrew for, disposable toys, disposable clothes, disposable radios. Everything's disposable? Why? Why is it all coming out of China? And why am I buying it? Well, because it's cheaper. And it's cheaper means I get to feel good about the purchase until it gets thrown away. But that attitude, the mindset, is the culture. It's a short-term life. There's no world to come. There's no value based on moral behavior. And therefore, I can sell you something that I know is going to break and I don't care. And you'll get over it. Whereas a culture that believes in quality and long-term value and that life has meaning beyond the grave, suddenly everything else becomes more meaningful. So you can say, oh, come on, Avraham, you're extrapolating too far. You're talking to me because stuff from China breaks down, you throw it away, it's all plastic, it's garbage. And therefore, it's based on the fact that they don't believe in one God? And they don't have the value system of one God? And the value system of the eternality of the soul and a future world where humanity is going to have a complete paradigm shift? And I'll tell you, well, let's look at it stage by step. It's a long staircase. But if you want to take the walk, I'll take you on the walk, but it's there. Because those values that create cheap, low quality materials, they always reflect a certain value towards their customer. How much they care about the customer's satisfaction with the product. Now, you could say, well, I don't care about the customer satisfaction. I just want my 10 million in the bank before I retire. And I could say, you know what? You're just like a lot of other people. But it doesn't mean it's right. But when I provide something for somebody, I want to give them the best I have, or at least try. And that's based on a sense of self-esteem and what I produce in the world. And that self-esteem that I produce in the world is based on the fact that I got a boss upstairs that really cares about what we do in this world and really cares about what we produce in our culture and cares when the name Jewish goes on something, it means something. Do you see what I mean? How deep it all goes? And that all is an outflow from our belief system. So, it's Hanukkah. We're supposed to be happy. We're not going to get too heavy because God's going to win. God's always going to win. It might be a long time, might be a short time. It might be a lot of little battles like Hanukkah was 7 years of what they call insurgent warfare. Jews hiding in caves, jumping out of the caves into the forest at night, walking through the forest, attacking some Greeks, and then running back to the cave in the forest in the dark of night. 7 years of that type of insurgent warfare. That's what the Greek war was happening here, which was capped by the Maccabees rebellion. Now, what sparked the whole thing? I'm sure most of you know this. It's not a pretty thing to repeat, but in the Greek culture, when an oppressed nation under their dominance, when a young woman got engaged, guess what? Guess what they would do with her the night before her wedding? Guess who would they give her to for a little premarital activity? Well, Yehudit was the daughter of the Kohanim, and she was supposed to get married the next day in the Hanukkah story. And she said, no way. I'm not doing this, because they were going to take her, and it would be effectively an aristocratic rape by a high-ranking Greek officer of some level. And she said, I'm not doing this. And she fought back, And that sparked the whole rebellion. One woman sparked the whole rebellion because she said, I'm gonna die before I let this guy rape me on my wedding night, the night before my wedding night. Now, where did they get this cultural move? This move that because we're the dominant culture, now we can take everybody's daughter and rape her the night before her wedding? Who invented that idea? Where did that come from? I don't think animals do that. But it was somewhere embedded in the Greek mindset of reality. And I guarantee you one thing, there was no one God concept in the Greek concept of reality. They had a pantheon of forces, and some of them were names that they stole from the Jewish pantheon of angels, but they just turned our angels into their gods. But they forgot to leave the God of all gods on top of the pantheon, or the Parthenon, it should be, down there in Athens. So because they didn't have a one God concept, there wasn't a one address for authority. And if there's no one address for authority, there's many authorities. And if there's many authorities, I can listen to whoever I want to. And if a guy's a general, he can just say, bring me the latest Jewish virgin. Do we need to say more? Why we need a cultural revolution? Now, of course, that's not happening on paper in the newspapers here too often, right? But we don't know how many children are kidnapped and how many young women are sold into slavery to some fellows not so far from here who have the money to buy anything they want. And how many of them were sold into slavery because of their own desire to be part of a harem, or because they were drugged and induced and didn't know what happened to them. You don't think it's still happening? You don't think there's global cultural warfare taking place? It's out there. Now, you might not want to look at it, and then maybe you don't want to look at this class again, this little talk we're having. But my goal, I hope this, reaches out to the people who can hear it, who have the heart to hear it and to care. Understand that the idea of a Jewish cultural revolution is the idea of implementing higher values into our creative expression in life. And there should be rules, good rules, divine rules, that guide us in our choices, that guide us in our children in developing their personalities, and so that when they go out into the world to express themselves, the stamp of God is upon them. The stamp of high values, quality understanding of the value of every human being. And that's the real victory of Hanukkah, is that Jewish culture becomes the center of our life and not this imported material that is not coming from a place that we can honor. God bless you all. Have a great Hanukkah. And, there's cause for celebration. The fact that we're here talking is a celebration. The fact that we can share Torah around this globe with a few pushes of a few buttons, that's a big miracle right there. And we're going to carry on with this idea the rest of this week. Hopefully all 8 days of Hanukkah will be enough to talk about, that we'll start a cultural revolution, at least in our own home. And the choices will be made. But we're going to cover some important ground in the days to come. God bless you all. Hanukkah Sameach.